Welcome to The Explainer. Okay, so today we're tackling something huge, 5,000 years of Indian history. I know, it sounds like a lot, right? But we're gonna break it all down, from some of the world's first cities all the way to the largest democracy on the planet. Let's get into it.
So that's the big question, isn't it? How did this land, a place of just unbelievably ancient civilizations, profound ideas, and these massive sprawling empires, how did it become the India we know today? We're going to trace the threads of this incredible 5,000-year-old story and see if we can figure that out together.
All right, to start, we've got to go way, way back. Our journey begins millennia ago, right at the dawn of civilization, where some of the very first chapters of human history were being written on the subcontinent. And look at the sheer scale of time we're talking about here. We're starting with the Stone Age, early stone tool cultures, and then we jump forward to something absolutely mind-blowing, the Indus Valley Civilization. This was one of the first great urban societies anywhere on Earth. And from there, we move into the Vedic Age, an era that really laid the cultural and philosophical foundations for everything that came after.
I mean, the level of sophistication here is just staggering. Think about it. Over 4,500 years ago, you had these cities with carefully planned, grid-like streets and these incredibly advanced drainage systems. We're talking stuff that could rival anything in Mesopotamia or ancient Egypt. But, and this is the big but, here's the mystery. We still can't read their writing. Their script is completely undeciphered, which means a huge chunk of their culture, their beliefs, their stories, it's all still lost to us. Isn't that wild?
So, after those incredible cities of the Indus Valley eventually declined, a totally new era began. And this one wasn't really defined by big buildings or urban planning. It was defined by powerful ideas. Ideas that would go on to shape the very soul of the subcontinent for thousands of years.
An essential piece of this new era was what's known as the Varna system. Now, this wasn't just a simple social ladder. It was seen as a kind of cosmic order, dividing society into these four main classes you see here: the priests, the warriors, the merchants, and the laborers. Each group had its own specific duties, and this structure became incredibly, just deeply embedded in the social fabric.
But, big ideas rarely go unchallenged. This was also a time of really intense philosophical debate. You had the established Vedic tradition, which was very focused on rituals and hymns. But then, these new movements like Buddhism and Jainism came onto the scene, and they basically said, hey, maybe there's another way. They offered these alternative paths to spiritual understanding, paths centered not on elaborate rituals, but on things like meditation, asceticism, and finding a middle way.
And you can see just how powerful these new ideas became with this quote. It's from the Edicts of Emperor Ashoka, one of the most famous rulers in Indian history. The story goes that after this incredibly bloody, brutal war, Ashoka had a total change of heart and converted to Buddhism. He completely renounced violence and dedicated his entire reign to spreading what he called dharma, basically righteous living. And as he says right here, he didn't just spread it in his own empire, but even 600 yojanas away. We're talking hundreds and hundreds of miles beyond his borders. That's influence.
Okay, so from the world of big ideas, let's switch gears and talk about the cycle of power. For centuries and centuries, the political story of the subcontinent was really defined by this recurring pattern, the rise and fall of great empires.
Yeah, for well over 1,000 years, you can see this distinct rhythm in Indian history. It's almost like a pulse. First, a powerful dynasty would rise up and manage to unite these huge, incredibly diverse territories. That would lead to a golden age, a time of stability, amazing art, incredible science. But, nothing lasts forever. Eventually, these empires would weaken and fracture back into smaller regional kingdoms, which of course just set the stage for the next powerful dynasty to come along and start the whole cycle over again.
And here are just a few of the heavy hitters. The Mauryan Empire, they were the first to pull off uniting most of the subcontinent. The Gupta Empire, wow, this was a true golden age of science and arts. These are the folks who gave the world the concept of zero. Think about that. And then you have the Mughal Empire, which left behind this incredible legacy of centralized government. And of course, some of the most stunning architecture you'll ever see, like the Taj Mahal.
But that cycle, that rhythm that had defined history for so long, it was about to be broken, completely shattered actually. And it was shattered by the arrival of a new, totally unfamiliar kind of power. One that didn't come over the mountains, but came from across the sea. If there's one year you need to remember from this period, it's this one, 1757, the Battle of Plassey. Now, it wasn't the biggest battle ever fought in India, not by a long shot, but its impact was monumental.
This one victory gave the British East India Company the crucial foothold it needed. It was the beginning of a century-long process that would end with them dominating the entire subcontinent. And you know, this didn't happen overnight. It was a slow, gradual process that took more than a century. The British first showed up just to trade, but they were smart, and they quickly learned how to play local kingdoms against each other to gain political power. A few key military wins later, their influence just kept growing and growing, until finally, after the massive revolt in 1857, the British Crown stepped in and took direct control. That was the official start of the British Raj.
So what did this new era look like? Well, for one, it brought massive economic change. India had this incredible, thriving textile industry, but it was basically dismantled to create a market for British goods. Farming changed too. Instead of just growing food, agriculture was shifted to produce cash crops like cotton and opium for the global market. So yes, India was connected to the world economy, but it was on very unequal terms. It was a connection based on it being a colonial resource, not an equal partner. But here's the thing about a great disruption like this. It often plants the seeds of its own end. And that's exactly what happened. All this change, all this upheaval, it sparked an incredibly powerful response. The birth of modern Indian nationalism, and the beginning of a long, hard fight for freedom.
And believe me, the path to independence was a long one. It started out with political groups like the Indian National Congress, which were formed to push for more rights within the system. But things really kicked into high gear when Mahatma Gandhi returned to India. He completely transformed the struggle with his philosophy of nonviolent resistance. This led to these massive, nationwide campaigns of non-cooperation, and that really set the stage for the final dramatic chapter of the story.
And everything we've talked about, it all led to this single moment, August 15th, 1947. After almost 2 centuries, British rule in India was finally over. It was this incredible moment of triumph, but it was also marked by the immense tragedy of partition. And out of the ashes of that empire, a brand new sovereign nation was born, starting this bold, unprecedented experiment as the largest democracy on earth.
So, there you have it. We've just raced from the ancient cities of the Indus Valley, through millennia of powerful empires, through the disruption of colonial rule, all the way to the birth of a modern republic. It's a 5,000-year story of unbelievable resilience and constant transformation. Which, of course, leaves us with one final, forward-looking question. What will the next chapter hold?